The wind was already screaming when you arrived, and if you stay until the end of this story, you'll understand why an entire frozen village stood in silence, tears freezing on their cheeks, as 5,000 kilograms of ice became the only thing standing between survival and disaster. Before we begin, take a second. If stories of human strength, survival, and heart move you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Because what you're about to witness isn't just a story, it's a battle against nature itself. The cold in Yakutia doesn't just bite, it hunts. At -71 degrees Celsius, the air feels alive, creeping into your lungs like shards of glass. In this brutal corner of the world, where the sun barely rises and the earth itself is locked in permafrost, survival isn't a lifestyle, it's a daily war. And on this day, the war was turning deadly. The village of Yakutia had been cut off for weeks. Supplies were gone. The last delivery truck never arrived, lost somewhere in the white emptiness that stretched endlessly in every direction. Food stores had dwindled to almost nothing. The elders had begun rationing. Children were going to sleep hungry. And the river, their lifeline, was frozen solid, 5 meters thick in places. That's where Mikhail stepped forward. He wasn't the strongest man in the village, nor the oldest, nor even the most experienced fisherman. But he carried something heavier than strength, he carried responsibility. His father had once led expeditions like this, before the cold took him years ago. And now, with the village on the edge of collapse, Mikhail knew there was no one else left to try. "We fish," he said quietly. The others stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Fishing at -71 degrees Celsius wasn't just dangerous, it was almost unthinkable. Tools froze, skin cracked, engines failed, and if anything went wrong, rescue wasn't coming. But hunger is louder than fear. By dawn, though dawn was barely more than a faint blue glow on the horizon, a small group gathered. Mikhail, Anya, a widowed mother of 2, Sergei, whose hands were already scarred from frostbite, and 3 others, each carrying the same silent understanding, this might be their last journey. They hauled their sleds across the frozen river, the snow crunching like broken glass beneath their boots. Every breath formed clouds that froze instantly onto scarves and eyelashes. Even their thoughts felt slower in the crushing cold. After hours of walking, Mikhail stopped. This is it. The ice beneath them was thick, ancient. Beneath it, somewhere far below, a river still moved, dark, cold, and full of life they desperately needed. They began to cut. Axes struck first. The sound echoed strangely, dull and heavy. Then the augers. Metal screamed against ice. Progress was painfully slow. Every few minutes, they had to stop and warm their hands, or risk losing fingers. Hours passed. The hole they carved was massive, wide enough to lower nets deep into the unseen water below. It took everything they had, every ounce of strength, every reserve of will. By the time the first net went down, the sky had darkened again. And that's when the storm came. It arrived without warning. One moment, silence. The next, a wall of white. Wind roared across the river, lifting snow into a blinding cyclone. Visibility dropped to nothing. The temperature plummeted even further, as if the world itself wanted them gone. "Pull the nets," Sergei shouted, his voice barely audible. But the ropes had already begun to freeze. Mikhail grabbed one, his gloves stiff as stone. He pulled with everything he had. The others joined in, leaning back, boots digging into the ice. For a moment, nothing. Then, movement, slow, heavy, alive. The net emerged from the darkness below, glistening with frozen water, and filled. Fish. Dozens. Hundreds. Enough to matter. A spark of hope ignited. They worked faster now, adrenaline pushing them beyond exhaustion. Another net, then another, each one heavier than the last. Each one bringing them closer to survival. But the storm wasn't done. Anya slipped first. Her foot caught on a ridge of ice, and she fell hard. The wind tore her hood back. Within seconds, her skin began to pale. Mikhail saw it immediately. "Get her up." They rushed to her, lifting her, shielding her from the wind. Sergei wrapped his own scarf around her face, ignoring the cold biting into his exposed skin. "Stay with us," he said, his voice trembling. Anya nodded weakly. They couldn't stop. Not here. Not now. If they did, they'd all freeze. With renewed urgency, they hauled the final nets. By the end, the pile of fish beside them was enormous, nearly 5,000 kilograms of frozen, life-saving food. But now came the hardest part. Getting back. The sleds were overloaded, the storm showed no signs of easing, and the path they had followed was already erased by the wind. Mikhail looked out into the white void. For the first time, doubt crept in. Then he remembered the village. The children. The empty shelves. "We move," he said. Step by step, they dragged the weight across the ice. Every meter felt impossible. Muscles screamed. Faces went numb. Time lost meaning. At one point, Sergei collapsed. No one spoke. They simply lifted him, forced him back onto his feet, and kept going. Because stopping meant death. Hours later, though it felt like days, a faint shape appeared in the distance. A light, then another. The village. They had made it. As they crossed the final stretch, people began to gather. At first, cautiously, then with growing disbelief. When they saw the sleds, when they saw the fish, something broke. Men who had never cried wept openly. Women covered their mouths in shock. Children ran forward, their laughter cutting through the cold like sunlight. Mikhail dropped to his knees. Not from weakness, but from relief. They had done it. Against impossible odds, against a world that seemed determined to crush them, they had brought life back to their people. That night, fires burned brighter than they had in weeks. Food filled every home. The village lived. And as Mikhail sat quietly, watching the others eat, Anya approached him. Her face was still pale, but her eyes were alive. "You saved us," she said softly. Mikhail shook his head. "We saved each other. Because in the end, that's what survival really is. Not strength, not skill, but people, standing together when everything else falls apart." So if this story moved you, if it reminded you what humans are capable of, even in the harshest places on Earth, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Because stories like this deserve to be remembered. And maybe, just maybe, they remind us that no matter how cold the world gets, the human spirit can still burn warm enough to survive.